Breaking news for you. CNN has learned that the former friend and neighbor of the male San Bernardino terrorist will be charged. Law enforcement officials tell CNN that the charges against Enrique Marquez will partly concern those two military-style rifles he bought that were used in the terror attack. Let's bring in Congressman Adam Schiff. He's a Democrat from California and the ranking member on the House Intelligence Committee. Congressman, thanks so much for being on New Day this morning.
You bet. Good to be with you.
Let's talk about that breaking news. Our reporter, Evan Perez, just said that he will be charged today, this neighbor and friend who supplied the weapons. And many people said, why did it take so long after the attacks?
Well, I can only say, and this is based on being a former prosecutor more than sitting on the Intelligence Committee, that if you have a cooperating suspect, even one that you may plan on arresting, you want to gain as much information as you can, particularly in a case like this where there may be elements of the public that could be at risk. Obviously, the priority for the FBI is finding out, are there any other co-conspirators out there? The director has said that this wasn't part of a larger cell, but nonetheless, there's important information that can be gleaned about this plot, about any prior plot. So I think they certainly wanted to keep this suspect talking.
Yeah.
But in light of what has become public, and without confirming the accuracy, if he is telling investigators that he purchased these weapons because he felt that if Farouk did, it would draw attention, or that he couldn't pass the background check, he is essentially a straw purchaser. But I'd be surprised if that were the sole issues that he has to contend with legally. It sounds like there's a lot more risk in terms of his exposure.
But Congressman, as a former prosecutor, explain this, because it does sound from investigators as though this guy could be a gold mine. He reportedly has told them about making the pipe bombs, how they did it, what they were capable of. But he also supplied the weapons. So what happens then? Does he get charged? And does he go to prison, or is he seen as a key witness?
Well, I think he, very well may be charged, and the prosecutors would look at a range of charges, and then there'd be a negotiation about, whether he would be willing to plead, whether he'd be willing to continue cooperating. I have to imagine that if he checked himself into a mental institution of some type, his lawyer is likely to make some kind of a defense based on his mental state or his mental capacity. So that's something that prosecutors may have to deal with. Again, I'm speaking as a former prosecutor here, not on the basis of anything we've been briefed on, but I could see that being the likely course of at least his legal case.
Okay. As you know, on Tuesday night at the CNN debate, all sorts of national security and terrorism issues came up. And basically, many of the Republicans blame President Obama and even Secretary of State Hillary Clinton for not keeping the country safe and better protect Americans. Let me play for you what Ted Cruz has said about some of this.
President Obama and Hillary Clinton are proposing bringing tens of thousands of Syrian refugees to this country when the head of the FBI has told Congress they cannot vet those refugees.
Congressman, where do you fall on that issue of whether or not it is safe to bring refugees, or whether or not our vetting system is just wildly flawed?
Oh, I think it is safe to bring refugees to this country. In fact, we've been doing it ever since 9/11 and have brought hundreds of thousands of refugees here and done so very safely. Ironically, for all the attacks on the refugees, these people who are essentially fleeing ISIS, that has been one of the most rigorously vetted programs that we have. If you're going to pick one way to get into the country and you pick the refugee program, you have picked the hardest way to get here that has, in fact, the most vetting, as opposed to things like we have seen recently, the travel to the United States without even a visa, without even an interview, that we are now cracking down on and toughening up. So it's a peculiar population to pick on, but nonetheless a very vulnerable population that doesn't have many advocates. But I do think you saw a few things during the Republican debate. You had essentially, I think, three categories of GOP candidates there, some who were clearly out of their element, really don't belong in a discussion on national security, and didn't know much about what they were talking about. Another category that was filled with reckless bluster about carpet bombing and barring all Muslims from coming into the country and killing family members of ISIS. And then another category that essentially adopts the same strategy as the president, but wants to call it something different and add a little swagger. But those were essentially the categories that we heard during that debate.
Okay, Congressman Adam Schiff, thanks so much for joining us with your perspective on all of this on News.